I want to close with a different example from the book that I love, and I want to encourage our listeners to talk to their family about this, because I used it with my kids, and I found it to be a remarkable exercise. Early on in the book, you talk about one of the concerns of globalization is inequality. And again, this is an enormous issue. We can't go into it now. But you give a wonderful example at the start of the book about time travel, imagining if your great-great-grandmother or great-great-grandfather was somehow transported into the present and came to the home of the world's wealthiest man, Bill Gates, who you just mentioned. And what would your great-great-grandmother find marvelous and extraordinary and unbelievable about Bill Gates' house and life?
Yeah, well, it's a mental experiment. Of course, we can't prove it, but imagine taking one of your ancestors from the mid or early 19th century, 200 years ago, and they're in Bill Gates' house. And I imagine, obviously they would be struck. They would be dumbstruck, just in utter awe, an awe that we can't imagine. But what would it be? They would be struck by the fact that the Gateses bathe daily. Just every day, every one of them bathes in hot water. They can adjust the temperature pretty finely.
They don't have to haul the water from a river or
no, and they use the bathroom inside.
Incredible.
That they have all their teeth. That these people can expect to live into their 80s and keep all their teeth until their 80s. That if they get tuberculosis, well, they probably won't get tuberculosis, but if they do, they're not that concerned. It probably won't kill them. That they can turn on a switch and watch in real time pictures from other parts of the world that are happening right away. That each of them can get into a small aluminum tube and within hours be on another continent. That each of them can get in another piece of aluminum that has 4 wheels and drive at unheard of speeds to a place across town or across state. That they can take a little pill called aspirin that will relieve a headache. That they can pop little round things into their eyes that make them look like they don't need any vision correction. Yet now Bill Gates doesn't, of course, he wears glasses. But again, I think the things that would most stun any ancestor from a century or more ago who was put into Bill Gates' house would be things that almost every American today has access to and takes for granted. You don't even think about it. It's true. I'm not saying that Bill Gates' life is exactly like your and my life, but I think one way to put it, I think the difference between the material content of Bill Gates' life and that of his family and your life and my life and that of our families, that difference is tiny compared to the difference between the lives of ordinary people from a century or more ago and your and my life today. I'm not worried about it. Sure, Bill Gates, he has his own private aluminum tube to fly across the continent. You and I have to share an aluminum tube with hundreds of other people. I'd prefer to have my own private aluminum tube. But no one in America starves to death today. We all have access at least to basic health care, although it's politically incorrect to say that. We can all talk in real time on telephones. We can all listen to musical recordings of the same quality that Bill Gates can listen to. We can all bathe daily. None of us, very few of us have head lice. We'll all pretty much keep our teeth if we want to until we're in our 80s. Our life expectancy, even for the poorest Americans, is much higher than it was for the richest Americans 100 years ago.
And the people around the world who have embraced the global world that Americans have mostly embraced are living more and more like Bill Gates. They are more and more likely to have access to the things that make life easier and help you live longer. Yeah. China and India, which are still very poor countries, are less poor because they have opened their borders. And it's true that there's still...
And we're less poor because they've opened their borders.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
And it is true that there are still desperately poor people. In fact, next week we'll be talking to Paul Collier, the author of The Bottom Billion, in next week's podcast, there are desperately poor people. They are mostly the ones who are cut off from the global trading system, tragically. So I think it's important to remember that the world at any point in time has an enormous disparity of wealth and well-being, but the trends are good.
Right, I agree.
My guest today has been Don Boudreaux, chair of the economics department at George Mason University. His book is Globalization,